Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is LK and this is Living Like LK, a series where I take your very real homes and help you uncover the potential with some very realistic design suggestions, thrifted items, or DIY ideas. And in this episode, I'm taking you through a few steps to design and curate a very cozy and intentional living room. So let's get into it and start with Addison's living room. This episode is in celebration of reaching 85,000 subscribers. And so far, I've done Living Like LK episodes when I hit 10K, I think 25K, 50K, 75K. And then because I had so many submissions, I opened it up at 85K. So this series, and honestly, this YouTube channel would not be possible without all of your guys' support and submissions. So thank you so much. It means the world to me. So Addison sent in her living room and was asking for some help. She just purchased her home with her husband in March this year. So that's very exciting. Congratulations, Addison. But one thing that she's really been struggling with in this new home is her living room. So Addison says, my living room feels very empty and not personal or comfy. We currently have a small budget, but are able to save for bigger purchases. So this is great because I like to try to provide some secondhand and thrifted and DIY ideas, but I also really like to highlight aspirational ideas as well, because you really need like a goal to aim for. And how can you really look for like the most perfect piece or DIY the most perfect piece if you kind of don't know what you're aiming for? So part of this series is me giving you kind of a big idea of where your room could go, and then it'll take you some time to find those pieces affordably and also to get them done, whether through a TaskRabbit or hiring a contractor or doing it yourself. So she goes on to say that her space feels very elongated and she's not really sure what to do with the area near the window, and she feels that it's awkward that the hallway is right in the middle of her living room. Another challenge that she's having is that she has no overhead lighting, so it just seems like very dark all the time. And I can definitely relate. A lot of us who live in older homes that were built in like the 80s and earlier probably deal with this same issue. She goes on to say that she gets quite a bit of natural light during the summertime, but she would love some lamps and other light sources, but she's really just not sure where to put them. So Addison ends this with her main goal here, which is she really wants some ideas to transform her living room into a comfortable and curated space that works for her family. She also mentioned that she doesn't really need to keep anything that's currently in the room. Her ideal vibe is really cozy and warm and inviting, and she uploaded these photos. This is a new feature I implemented because I thought I did and I forgot to do that on my previous submissions. So she was able to add these 5 images of what she was looking to transform her living room into, which is very helpful for me. I asked her what she really likes about these photos, and she says she loves how these photos feel warm and bright and cozy. She also really likes the color palette of mostly neutral colors with some small pops of colors here and there. So let's dive into this fun and yet very super challenging living room for Addison. I really want to start with some of just the noticeable issues right off the bat. Looking at these photos, I think there's so many noticeable changes that we can make. Of course, Addison just purchased this home, so she still has to probably move all her things in, get a feel for how she wants to really live in this space. And there's tons of ways that we could go about changing this room, but I want to start with things that I noticed first. So first, you kind of have these 2 very natural focal points. One is the giant window on one end of the room, and the other is the fireplace on the other end of the room, which is why you're saying that this room feels so narrow and elongated and weird, because it is technically a long, narrow rectangle. And you're probably feeling like it's awkward and you don't know what to do with the window space because you set up camp all the way at the other end around the fireplace, which I think leads into you saying it's kind of random that there's a hallway in the middle of the living room. Sometimes we move into a home where maybe the architect was not that thoughtful of the interiors and they didn't understand how people were going to actually live in that home. So when the footpath doesn't make sense, rooms can tend to feel either empty or too crowded or just generally awkward. So let's try to solve these 2 issues with defining a footpath. So in these photos, you'll see that basically it looks like you enter the home through this door here and you're guided into an empty room. And our brains don't really love this vagueness because I think we really just innately crave like order and structure. So for example, with your sofa here that's blocking that door in the background, even if you don't really use that door, it's kind of making all of us feel a little bit uncomfortable. But before we even get to moving any furniture around, let's define our actual footpath for this room. So Addison, your footpath specifically should include plenty of room to walk toward that door in the back, the fireplace, the kitchen, this little like window bar area, the big window, the front door, and then this little hallway right here. So these are all of your zones that you need to be able to easily access either just by looking at them or by walking to them. I think that's going to take a huge load off of your brain with things feeling awkward or uncomfortable. So now that we have this general blueprint of how the room should be maneuvered through, the goal is to add furniture and decor along these footpaths, but never in the middle of it. So because this little hallway here is situated right in the middle of your two focal points, the fireplace and the window, this living room is basically being interrupted by a transitional area. And I'm gonna call this little transitional area your faux hallway. So naturally, this faux hallway is now creating two different zones in your living room. So we need to pivot and stop looking at this long rectangular living room as one room and instead three separate zones. We have the fireplace area, and then we have the hallway to the kitchen, and your third zone is over by the window as well as like that little kitchen bar area. This is technically what you would have to do if you live in an open concept space like a loft or something. You kind of have to be like a city planner and decide, okay, where are my roads? And then like, where can I stop off to grab a drink or hang out with friends? It'll help you feel a little bit more creatively energized when you can look away from just trying to define one space as a specific room and start identifying different zones that serve different purposes. So now that we have defined these three zones, the window area, the faux hallway, and the fireplace area, these are our confines to design within. So let's take, for example, the window area. I can break this area up into micro zones if I really wanted to. For example, we have this little like window that opens up into the kitchen and kind of creates like a natural little bar area. So we could probably leave some space around here to add a countertop and some bar stools. I think that could be like a really fun option. Even if it's just an area to pass through food and drinks, I think this space was intended to have some kind of action happening there and to just not block it off. You could block it off or just ignore it, but for the sake of this exercise, let's use it as a little micro zone. And then to the right of that, we have our window area, and it extends really all the way into our faux hallway area because there is no natural divide. You could also extend this whole area all the way to almost where the front door flooring changes, as it looks like that's kind of its own dedicated entry area. And then you've got this little skinny wall here, which is kind of its own little micro zone. And then this is like your tiny little family room area where you can have the fireplace, TV, and furniture. So as you can see, as the room is now, this big recliner chair is technically in the middle of the road. It's kind of in your faux hallway. And so is your sofa, considering we need direct access to that door. Even if we don't use it often, our brains and bodies need that. So we have to move those in toward the fireplace area. So when we bring those closer, it's kind of a tight fit, but honestly, guess what? That's what really makes a cozy space. And Addison wants a cozy living room. So bringing things a little bit closer together really does give that cozy feeling. Okay, so now that we've defined all these little areas and we kind of have a better idea of how this room operates, we can work within each one of these zones. So let's add some furniture into one of these zones to kind of get a better idea of how it could be designed. I think we should start with the TV area, considering that's kind of where you set up camp to begin with. And I think based on what I can see in these photos, this is what I have for where all of your plugs are. And combining the electrical with wall space and the rest of the zones in here, I do think you have your TV on the right wall. I think if you put it over your fireplace, it's going to be way too high up for your neck and it's not going to feel comfortable. But at the same time, it looks like your TV is too high at the moment, and I'm not sure if maybe that's why your chairs are so far back, because it gives you more of a straighter eye line. So now that we've moved in the sofa and the chair, we need to drop that TV down to a comfortable eye line. Next, I think you do need a bit of a bigger credenza or media unit here. Something a bit taller and wider is really going to fill up that wall nicely and just make this area feel a bit more grounded. You want something that's not going to compete in a negative way with the fireplace, as the hearth is so big. So I think creating something a little bit bigger and taller is going to make the fireplace feel balanced. Next, I think you're going to have to definitely take some measurements and see what types of furniture are really going to fit into this confined zone area. But let's just say that you keep this sofa and it fits, and I'm just going to put an image in here of something that looks like your sofa. And I'm going to move it here because I think this helps define our little faux hallway a little bit more. The back of the sofa kind of acts as like a mini wall. And to reinforce that even more, I think we could put like a very simple, minimal sofa table behind it that's the same height as the back of the sofa. And this could be an area that you can add decor, like plants or books, or even just your drink. I also think that you could get 2 swivel chairs to put here and here. That way people can swivel around and look at what's going on in the rest of the room or the kitchen or watch TV. And if you upgraded your coffee table to something a little bit bigger that just filled out that area a bit more, like something even that was maybe even upholstered so that the 2 people sitting in their chairs could put their feet up while watching TV, could be great. And if you want to put drinks or food down on your coffee table, then you could just put a really big tray on it to have that hard surface. You could put a side table in the corner here, or you could leave it open for entry, because right now to get into this little family room fireplace area, you mainly just have one entry point, which is by the console and the sofa. So having 2 and I guess a third, which is over by the door, to get in here might feel nice and natural, but you could like have a little side table that you move around, something small like a little cocktail table. And then you could further define this whole area, of course, with a very big rug. I know that currently you have like a high pile carpet right now, and you can definitely put a rug on carpet. I would just get something a little bit like thicker and heavier to sit on that high pile carpet. Something too thin is going to wrinkle and move around and not feel like secure, I guess. So getting like a heavier, thick wool rug, something that fits that area perfectly, would really help define that space and just change up like the color and the look of this room. So this is really going to be like the skeleton, I think, for creating that cozy space that you're going for. I think people can also additionally sit on the hearth, like if you have guests over, and when you have a bigger coffee table there and everyone's sitting on the chairs, the hearth, and the sofa, it's gonna feel super warm and cozy. If you do celebrate Christmas, I think you could put like a Christmas tree on this blank area of the hearth, but I was thinking just year round, you could have like a nice, really big piece of like textile art there. Just depends on what your style is and what you find out there that's affordable, but I found this on Etsy, which I thought was pretty cool. I also would either bring your 2 pictures closer together because they're kind of small and spread out too far apart for this big area over the fireplace, or my better suggestion, I think, is to get a big mirror that fits that whole area, because that's going to reflect everything that you have going on outside the window, which is going to bring in some additional light into that space. I also think you could up the cozy vibes with like a big basket full of wood or blankets or something like that. And then I think you could flank that mirror with 2 really interesting sconces. Even if you found 2 sconces that need to be hardwired and you don't want to pay for an electrician to come over and hardwire that, you could just put in some battery powered light bulbs in the meantime. And you could even put like a big, really interesting sculptural plant on the hearth, even just in front of that piece of art, or you could move it over to this wall over here. And I think this wall would be super fantastic with a bookcase on it. I don't know, of course, your exact measurements of this room, but I think aesthetically, if it could work, having some kind of built-in bookcase like this would be super cool. It would make the room feel even more cozy. You could display a bunch of tchotchkes and family heirlooms and books and things like that, because what makes a room feel really cozy is something that's been very collected and very personalized, at least in my opinion. I also think you want to layer in a bunch of natural textures like textiles, which could be blankets and pillows. You'll also want to bring in maybe some plants, stone, baskets, wood, anything like that can really add to the cozy vibe. And then just for a final look on this room here, I wanted to also change out your floors to like a dark wood, just so you could get an idea of what it would look like. There's engineered hardwood flooring out there that's in really nice colors and feels so much better than LVP flooring. And I don't know if the price is like that much more expensive than LVP, honestly. So I would definitely look into that, and that could be one of those big saving things that you purchase in the future. Oh, and lastly, I did put some crown molding around the ceiling. I thought this would be really nice because it kind of emphasizes all of the natural wood that's in your kitchen, as well as the wood doors, and your home kind of does have this like mid-century feel. So that's kind of why I leaned into that style direction. Okay, so before we move over to the window area, I definitely want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Live It Up, and have some of their Super Greens juice. You guys know that I love showing off my little coffee bar here. I love to thrift mugs and glassware and make cold brew and espresso drinks, but I've been trying to limit myself to just 1 coffee a day, which is so hard for me, but it's just because I have not been able to sleep at night. So to curb that afternoon craving, I've been reaching for a serving of these Super Greens, which has been so amazing. Super Greens is a green powder made with organic vegetables and over 20 superfoods. It's all natural, it mixes easily, so instead of another coffee, I just mix a scoop of these Super Greens with water, and it actually helps me stay focused and keep my energy up without keeping me up all night. I think the best part is that this does not taste like a chalky green powder, it kind of tastes like a minty water. It's very refreshing. It does not taste like drinking wheatgrass or something. I usually go for the natural one, but sometimes I go for the wild berry flavor when I'm craving something sweet in the afternoon because it's completely sugar-free and caffeine-free. I also love that each scoop includes 3 cups of organic vegetables, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and over 20 superfoods, which I think has been really helping me stay consistent on my health journey. So as we get into the holidays, I'm really going to be leaning on super greens to help me avoid that big sugar overload while keeping my energy steady and my days balanced. And right now, Live It Up is doing their Black Friday sale with up to 50% off their entire site. If you use my code LK15, you'll get up to 50% off during the holiday season, and they'll include a free shaker bottle when you subscribe. Just use your phone to scan the QR code here, or you can click the link down in the description below to get an additional 15% off your first order. Okay, now let's turn around and focus on this big window area. Okay, so let's assume that you've now created this into like a little bar area with a bar top and some bar stools. I think this big window could really benefit from having drapes that go all the way up to the ceiling. I think that's just going to elongate your room a little bit more, and I think the gap is just kind of making it feel a bit stunted. You can use track curtains to get closer to the ceiling, or you can use a rod, whatever you prefer. I just think going higher is going to be better. I also think going wider is going to be better. You're gonna wanna go from wall to wall just to give more of a presence and a focal point to this area. If you look at some of those inspo images you sent me, I think they all kind of have this look as well. So you can always look to those to refer to how you can implement these changes in your home and just try it out and see how you like it. So now you have curtains that extend all the way to the front door and all the way to this kitchen bar area. And I noticed that you have a wall AC unit, and I don't know if it works because you also have like a floor AC unit, but if it does work and you want to use it, your curtains can just open up in the summer right there, and you can use it when it's turned on, and when it's turned off, you can just close it back up. So I don't think that's a huge issue. The other options is to add a Roman shade. So you could have it like a valance where it's just sitting over the window most days. And then when you want to close it for some privacy, you can just pull it down, and you don't have to get one that's super opaque like the ones that I have that are made out of bamboo. You can get some linen ones or some patterned ones, something that still allows you to have texture and color in the room and also filter light through. I love 2Pages for this, and they've given me a discount. And I think right now when this video is posted, they'll have their Black Friday sale. So make sure to go check them out. I will link everything down in the description below. I think you could also create like a little built-in bench underneath the window here. I think that would just give this whole area a little purpose. You could sit there and do some reading or hanging out. You can also use the bench for storage. So extra blankets, games, you know, Christmas supplies, whatever it might be. And if you want to utilize that area to just kind of hang out and get some natural daylight and look outside, you could also put a daybed there too. There's a lot of really interesting, simple, modern ones. And I think we've maybe like forgotten about that piece of furniture as a collective. I don't see it talked about a lot, but I do think it's kind of an interesting option, especially when you're trying to build out an area that doesn't have a true functional purpose. I think I would also really define this area with a rug. I think rugs are so perfect for defining areas. Sometimes they bring in color and texture, but other times it's really great for delineating spaces. And this rug, based on the size you get, will be another side of your faux hallway. So now you kind of have more of this defined road in the middle of your room here because of the edge of the sofa table and the edge of the rug in your window area. Additionally, I think some other ideas for this space could be to have like a little seating area, like a conversation area with 2 big comfy chairs and like a little coffee table. This could also be like a game table spot too, that you guys sit and play games at with your friends and family or just yourselves. And when you don't have any kind of games going on, you can put like a nice vase with some flowers on the table, which would also act as like a landing zone from the front door. I don't know what you have going on in the front entryway, but this could be an area to drop your mail or your groceries or your hats and coats, somewhere to put your things. And in the meantime, an area to like sit there and also like have a snack or breakfast. It could almost act as like a faux breakfast nook. I saw that there's kind of a chair looking thing maybe in your kitchen potentially. And so maybe that's where you have your table and chairs where you eat. And if that's comfortable and great, then leave it as is. But there's also no harm in having an additional table out there to do other things. And you might actually enjoy sitting closer to the window and getting some more daylight and looking outside than just being stuck in the kitchen. I think if you paired this table and chairs idea with the built-in bench, it gives you additional seating and of course more storage. And then lastly, just more options. So you can always move the table, especially if you get a foldable one and put it away. You can bring it out even if you're just entertaining. There's just so many different different options here for hanging out in front of the window, which is something I and my cats love to do. Oh, my other idea for this area too was to also use it as your dining room if you don't have one and you'd like one. Maybe you want to entertain family and friends for the holidays or just, you know, in general. You could have like 6 to 8 chairs here with a rectangle table, and then you could use the little window in the kitchen with a countertop added to it as like a little serving area. And you could have bar stools there even when you're not entertaining. So I think this is such a really nice flex area for entertaining and just general everyday living, whether it's reading or eating a meal or organizing your papers and doing your taxes. And then over in your family room area, this is where you're going to hang out and unwind and get cozy and turn on the fireplace and play video games or watch movies or whatever it is. When it comes to lighting, I did talk about having the sconces that flank your fireplace. I also saw that there was a plug by your fireplace, and I was thinking maybe you could have a cord that travels underneath the rug so that you could have a floor lamp here. You could also put like a cute little lamp on your credenza underneath the TV, something a little bit more vibey so it doesn't interact with the TV too much. I also think, you know, utilizing battery powered bulbs is great in open spaces like this where you can't always have access to lamps. I think on your little kitchen bar area, you could absolutely put a cute little lamp on top of there. You could also do the pendant light trick in this window area where you plug in a pendant light and then travel it up through the corner and into the middle of that area and have like a nice, really pretty statement light hanging over whatever you end up putting there, whether it's a dining table or a game table or just a seating area. I think you could probably add some, you know, cute shelves or something to this little mini wall here that doesn't have a huge purpose. And there is a plug on this wall, so you could put a lamp on one of those shelves, or you could plug in a floor lamp there and put like a cute little table or shelf with it. You could also potentially get one of those big like arched lamps. So they kind of act as like a pendant light in a sense, but it's all one big structural thing. They're kind of more so like mid-century style, and they definitely lean a little bit more expensive, especially if you're finding like an authentically vintage one. But I think that could also be a way to stretch light over an area based on wherever your plug is. Green is a great neutral color. It goes with so many different things. I think if you also stick to more muted tones of colors, they can read a little bit more neutral. And for your bigger pieces of furniture, I would absolutely go neutral, especially if you're not decided on a design style. So maybe the sofa that you get, if you get a new one, is something that's like a little bit more beigey brown or something like that. You could also do something really dark. That could be reading as neutral too, depending on how you design around it. So hopefully some of these ideas help generate your creativity and get you kind of moving in the right direction in your living room. And I always tell people that they can suggest ideas for Addison in the comments. There is a way to give constructive feedback and criticism in a way that's respectful, so let's do that. Other than that, if you want me to potentially work on your room in the future, I will link the form in the description below. I'll have to see what I can get to, and maybe I can do another video at 95, but if I'm gonna do another video at 95, maybe I should just wait till 100,000. Hopefully that would be super cool if we could hit 100,000. So definitely subscribe if you haven't. Like this video, hype it, do all the things to boost into the algorithm if you support this channel. And I'm also thinking of doing a little follow-up on Annie's room sometime in the future. Her and her husband have been loving the space so much. She says all she wants to do in there is just hang out and read at night and have all the cozy lamps on, so she totally loves it. Other than that, check out the link in my description to try out some Live It Up super greens for yourself, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.